Hi there, I'm Rebecca and a really warm welcome back to my channel, PumpkinBecki. In this week's video we're going to be doing a little bit of autumn tidy up on my bonsai trees. Let's get started. As we saw in last week's video, most of our bonsai trees are in their autumn colours or have now dropped their leaves already. And it's a great time to come in and have a look at the structure of the tree that we have before us. It's the perfect time to see its skeleton and assess what we need to do. As you probably already know, most of my trees are what you would term pre-bonsai. They are things like nursery stock or saplings or young trees that I'm growing on in the hopes of developing something interesting. They're not going to be anything special, they're not going to be anything you would ever exhibit, but I will have learnt from them. I have got one lovely big Chinese elm which I bought from Ken at Windy Bank Bonsai Nursery. It's still not a finished tree. It's not in refinement. It is very much in development still. So I probably won't be trying to do work on that at this time of year. I will clean off leaves, I will check for any dead or damaged branches, and I will give it an autumn feed, which we'll talk about later. But other than that, I'm going to be leaving that tree alone. The ones I want to look at are my young ones that have maybe got again broken branches, things that could potentially be reduced back a little bit to try and make sure that other buds develop, rather than with this particular Rowan, it likes to put all its foliage out right at the tips and doesn't do an awful lot in the middle. So maybe I need to start thinking about how this tree is developing and thinking about its future. I'm also going to go through and take off any of my BioGold feed, because that is not what this tree needs right now. All the trees got their last organic feed in about September, once the temperatures had cooled off a little bit, because August was pretty hot. And then it cooled down in September, which is very unlike it. Normally as soon as the schools go back then it's baking hot again, but it didn't do that this year. So yes, it got a last application of organic feed, and that now needs to come off so that I can clean the soil surface and get it ready for dormancy. So it has dropped quite a few dead leaves onto the soil surface. We will definitely get rid of those. Any trees that I do prune, and it would be very carefully considered pruning at this time of year, I will be leaving them here in the greenhouse. It's unheated and the door is currently open. It's not right now because you wouldn't be able to hear me over the road noise, but normally the door is left open. So it's not going to be too much of a shock for these trees to be coming in. So the sorts of things I'm going to be removing are these kind of creeping mosses. And we'll try and get as much root out at the same time. I am also going to be just having a little look at the moss that's coming up the tree trunks. Make sure it's not degrading the bark. I have got a toothbrush on hand just to give things a little scrub down if need be. Things like chickweed needs to come out. And there's probably little bits of liverwort as well. I want to keep an eye out for that. Here's a bit of feed. I've got a few exposed roots going on, so I think this tree has actually put on quite a bit of root over the summer, which is great news. It did get repotted in the spring, so I'm pleased about that, but I will want to just cover that back up again, and I will just do that with my moss. So I don't want the moss growth to be starting to erode the trunk, so I am just going to make sure that it, for the winter, is away from the trunk base. The next thing I want to do is have a look at the tree as a whole. And I actually find filming my trees really useful for this. I see things that I would totally miss just looking at the trees front on. And sometimes I'm editing the footage and I think, ugh, I could have done that. Imagine this is the branch of a Rowan tree. It produces these alternate leaves. Now these leaves are really long, and coming off them are pairs of leaflets. And so they are what you might think of as a leaf when you look at the tree, but actually they are leaflets, and the whole stem is the leaf. Now what I did this summer was I was actually reducing the leaf down to 2 or 4 buds, just to, I think it was 2 pairs. Yeah, it was 2 pairs. And I was, chopping all this length off, just like that, and reducing it down to 2 pairs of leaves, quite close. And I wanted to reduce the distances between the internodes because they were getting really long and didn't really know how to reduce them down. And chopping that leaf right down was the key. It has encouraged this to produce more buds, and I can see there are buds all over the place. They're getting tighter. It's popped lots of buds. I have got, unfortunately, a broken branch here. We had some very strong winds and some of my trees got knocked off their benches, so possibly that's what happened there. I've got a couple of dead leaves, so that's going to come off. And that's going to come off. The tree doesn't need those now. It has taken all the sugars and carbohydrates that it's made in those leaves, and it is pulling them all down into the tree. It's also a great time to check for things like scale, which create, if you're not looking hard enough, they just look like buds. And it's not until you press them or squish them that they break and you get a sort of powderyness come out from inside, and you realise that was an insect in there. Great time to check for these. Things with very flaky bark, like my grapevines that are just growing in the garden, they really suffer with scale. And I think they find it really nice and easy to hide in all the flaky bark. So I have to be a bit careful about how much flaking I allow on the barks of my grapevines. So I am just coming through, removing any dead or damaged branches. I can remove stubs like this one. Quite nice and cleanly. And the nice thing is that these will heal with minimal scarring at this time of year. And it's a great time to think about potential next steps for these trees. Apologies for the amount of cuts I'm having to do. There are so many noisy bikes and cars out there today, and the sound is really travelling. I think because the cloud's low, it's really focusing all the sound. This tree doesn't have a strong leader. It is taking more of a deciduous form where it's a bit more up and out, a sort of informal, upright deciduous, which I quite like, but it's all very samey. Everything's sort of ending at the same height. This branch being the thickest is the natural sort of apex for the tree, but we might do something with it next year. I'm not going to remove any tips right now. They're all nice and fattened up, ready for next year. I think I would risk the health of the tree if I tried to do that now. I'm quite happy just having done some cleanup. Can you tell I'm being a little bit more cautious after my rather exciting spring pruning? For right now, I'm happy to just be reducing stumps and maybe minimising some previous cut scarring, trying to sort of smooth things out. And then I'm just blobbing on a little bit of callus mate, just to help protect those from insects, moisture loss, anything like that really. Other than giving it a feed with a zero nitrogen feed, which I'm going to do shortly, this is now going to move into the greenhouse for the winter. The next tree we're looking at is one of my Cotoneasters. This is one of the air layers that I took, and it's been doing really nicely. I think it's safe to say that Cotoneaster is probably one of the best beginner trees. Yeah, it does not seem to mind what I have done to it. So, it has picked up a hitchhiker. It has got a little sedum in with it. I'm going to pull that out and we'll replant it in probably one of my fairy gardens, I think. Let's see if I can dislodge it. They will really enjoy this sort of free, draining, gritty soil as much as bonsai will. I've got a similar situation with weeds on the top, and I have definitely got some liverwort here. This is liverwort. It forms these sort of flat platelets, and it is a sign of dampness in the soil. And it creeps and it takes over, so it's good to remove it when you see it. Again, I'm going to take off any of my biogold which still remains. So the plan for this little one is, as you can start to see, a bit of a cascade or semi-cascade. It seems quite happy growing downwards, so if it's enjoying that, then we won't hinder it. What I will do is I will check the wire and maybe rewire it, remove any stubs again, and I will reduce some of these branches. Being more evergreen, it can withstand this. Don't get me wrong, I will be leaving it in the greenhouse again. But this will help make this much more dense. And it will also allow light in. I have got some branches starting to layer over the top of each other, and you can see that some leaves are starting to suffer from that. You will get the odd leaf that is turning colour and falling off, so just make sure to clean the soil surface again. Now I'm going to try and come in and have a look at that wire. This is quite a thick wire. From memory it was a bit of a mission to get it on. This little tree has got a strange root here, but I think now if we spin round to the other side, I can see it is developing quite a nice root here, which could quite happily replace this one. As I say, not right now, that would be a spring job to do, to take that off, but it's nice to see that we have a replacement developing that could take that strange root away. What I'd really like is for this to start thickening, but I know I've only just removed it from its mother plant. You know, I can't expect the world. Getting a thick wire on something with no distances that are so small and it's got so many leaves is pretty tricky. What it'd be quite nice to do now is to start trying to get a little bit of movement in this extension that I've had this year. I think that's going to start being pretty fun pretty quickly. And I really want to move it into a marmite cascade as soon as humanly possible. But I do want that trunk to thicken up. Until I've got that, it's not time to do that. What I will do is I am going to take my little cuttings and I am just going to poke them in around the side. And let's see. If we get... Ooh. Let's see if we get any new babies. I'm having so much fun with these little Cotoneaster. And because they were free anyway, I mean, this was a self-seeded little plant that just appeared somewhere one day, and so far I've got three trees, nearly four trees. I'm doing another air layer at the moment on one of the other ones. This is one of my little leaf lindens that I potted up last year. It had been quite a small pot and I decided last year was the year to move it. It's done really well, put on lots of growth. It's thrown out a lot more buds this year, so it obviously needed potting on. I'm having a Xavier moment. Yeah, so we're also getting a really nice sturdy trunk. Considering this was a starter tree that I bought from Corin Tomlinson not that many years ago, it really has chonked up, to use a technical term. Again, I'm taking off the organic fertiliser. This little tree is now so robust that birds can perch on it, and I know that because they've been leaving me little messages everywhere. Thank you. Hopefully it's just somebody small like Fred the Robin or something, rather than a wood pigeon. I think I'm actually going to cut the wire that's securing this tree in, because it goes right across the top of the root mass, like it would need to secure the tree in. but it doesn't seem to need it now. It's really got itself in. So I don't want to cause any scarring across my roots, so we'll just cut that and remove it if we can. Yes, we can. Fantastic. It's the 9th of November and it's only about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it has been this sort of consistent grey all day, but I can tell my light is fading now. The akadama in this pot is already starting to break down. I think this tree has just made so much growth this year. It's just demolishing everything in its pot. I'm going to have to find this tree some more moss. It's all got contaminated with the Spanish moss and the liverwort. So again, I'm just going to go through, remove any little stubs that can come off without doing any damage. Just cleaning up the silhouette, getting it ready for a new growing season. I can start to think about what I want this tree to become, but I'm not going to do any work towards that right now. I am popping a little bit of callus mate onto the cuts I've made on this tree. I didn't worry with the Cotoneaster because, to be honest, all the cuts were so tiny. Good, and that will come into the greenhouse here as of now. Just nipped back into the house to check the temperature and it's dropped to 8 degrees, so I'm not going to be out here much longer. I think this is going to be my last tree for today. This is the other Japanese larch. We looked at the cascade last week and it still had its needles on. It had lovely little tight compact whorls of growth. This one is a very different beast. I am letting the top just go. If I just move you up, there's the top. And this is the top of the branched area. What I'm trying to get it to do is just drive resources up and down the tree and really get it thickening up nicely. And it's doing just that, and it is creating lots of branching, but it's not as compact as the other one. That may not matter, because this is a different tree. I am treating this very differently. The very act of popping something into a cascade is suppressing the growth, because you're making the branch bend down, and that will just automatically suppress growth. So all the needles, of course, have gathered on the soil surface, so we need to remove those, but it makes sense to remove the loose needles from the tree first. Ooh. If they're still hanging on, then that's fine. The tree probably still wants to get some nutrients out of them, but if they're brown and just coming off in my hand, then yeah, it's done with them. So the cascade did receive a number of prunings through the year. I think I said it had about 3. This one probably got its main one, and then I basically left it alone. Again, I'm going to come in and remove liverwort, weeds, and the spiky moss, which I think might be a Spanish moss. And it's really important to do this sort of clean up before you bring your trees in. You don't want the old needles just rotting on the surface and adding to the organicness of the soil. The whole point of growing in Akadama lava pumice mixtures is that it is not organic, even though they're organic, but it's not like soil, it's not compost. They don't break down as quickly and as easily as soil, compost, leaf mould do, and so they maintain the air-water ratios in the soil much better, much better than compost will. So if you let organic things like leaves and needles break down on the soil surface, you're just completely undoing all that work that you've done by putting on expensive Akadama pumice and lava. I am going to shorten some of the summer's growth, but I'm not going to go too hard because sometimes larch can be a bit picky and just decides not to actually do anything with a branch, and you think that was completely healthy, it had loads of buds on it and it just does nothing. So I just take a little off. If there's any that want completely removing because they are making either T branches on the trunk or they're making trifurcations, then they can come off. I can make the decision as to which one I'm going to remove and just do that. I've got a little bit of wire on here, which was just helping set these branches, which had wanted to be very close together. I was just helping hold them apart. But that can come off now, because larch do put on a lot of vascular tissue over winter, and that's when you really do get scarring. What I will remove are any branches that are pointing downwards. The conventional way of growing larches is with the bottoms of the branches clean. So for example here, this branch is coming out from underneath. Now I could keep that one because it's got lots of buds on it and remove this one. There is a second branch to the side of it, but I think this one's got lots of nice buds as well. I'm going to remove this one, and it is very much a case of taking it right off flush. I have got here quite a nice little branch, but it's in quite a cluttered space. We've got this one, and this one is branching right over the top of this little branch. I could just pop a little piece of wire on it and encourage it to come out into this space, which is much more open and available for it. I will anchor around the branch here. Bring the wire up onto this one. And just move it into that space. I think that's a good change. Yeah, like that. And then I can always bring this piece back again. There's an interesting situation going on here. I almost want to remove this very straight, horizontal, quite lignified branch and replace it with this one that has come out from on top of it. It's got a lot more interest going on it. Or I apply wire and move this one out just a little bit. So that it forms a pad over the top. That could work. It would be less radical. I'm not in the mood for being radical. My trees got their last dose of BioGold, which is an organic fertiliser, and it's in a pellet form, and you just lay it on the soil surface, or you can use those little baskets if you want to, but I prefer just laying it on the soil surface. They got their last dose of that at the beginning of September. The reason being I didn't give them a feed in August because the temperatures were so hot that actually the trees were in a summer dormancy. So once they started going again, I gave them a little boost just at the beginning of September. Now we're in November and they're going on to a 0 nitrogen, 10% phosphorus, 10% potassium liquid feed, which is a chemical fertiliser rather than an organic one. And it's going to support the vascular growth that is happening now. So when I said earlier that the trees are going into dormancy, that's not strictly true. They're just going into a different sort of growth. So right now the trees are taking all the energy, all the carbohydrates and sugars that they've been gathering all summer long with those leaves, and they are pulling them into the core of the system, the vascular system, the trunk, the roots, some of the chunkier branches. They're pulling it all into there, and what that's doing is it's helping to bring down the temperature at which the tree would freeze. So it's increasing its frost resistance, and that traffic is what is making the vascular system, the trunks, the roots, beef up, get bigger, get thicker. So that's why in the winter you see the biggest jump in trunk growth, for example. This particular brand, Matsu PK 01010, tells us that we need to apply 5 millilitres to 4 litres of water, and you apply it every 2 weeks until growth ceases. So I'm probably actually a bit late. Yeah, I'm a bit late, but I'm not very good at deciding when autumn is and when it isn't. It will still help the vascular system, so especially bringing trees now into the greenhouse, it will increase the temperature for them a little bit, and they may just have a little bit longer to go. So I will be applying this. Right, well that's it for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, share and subscribe to me here on YouTube, and until next time, bye.